besides the little clip that was floating around of her calling her Taylor Swift 2.0. I wanted to see what Stephanie White had to say about none other than Caitlin Clark. Now, we know Caitlin Clark is currently getting ready to head to North Carolina next week. I believe it's in North Carolina for the Team USA training session. Now, Stephanie White will be a part of that training session. And it's just going to be interesting, man, to see how this Team USA thing go about. So, yeah, man. So we got the Team USA thing to look forward to. And
all right, imagine this moment vividly. A room so silent it felt almost unreal, the kind of stillness where even the faintest breath sounded too loud. Stephanie White, the intensely disciplined and razor-sharp head coach of the Indiana Fever, had just wrapped up a remarkably thorough breakdown of her roster. She spoke with precision, almost surgical detail, praising her major stars one by one, emphasizing their defining qualities and the irreplaceable impact each would have on the team moving forward. She marveled at Caitlin Clark's almost supernatural calm under crushing pressure, applauded Aaliyah Boston's surprising adaptability, and highlighted Kelsey Plum's flawless, never-shaken professionalism. Each compliment was layered, thoughtful, and spoken with genuine conviction. But then, the temperature in the room shifted, because there was one name, one very noticeable name, that she did not mention at all: Sophie Cunningham. Her complete absence from White's extensive list wasn't a simple slip. It landed like a silent thunderclap. And in the middle of swirling league-wide rumors, her omission ignited an immediate chain reaction. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't casual. This was a pointed signal, a quiet but powerful indication that deep inside the Fever front office, something was very wrong. It carried the heavy suggestion that Sophie's future with the franchise was hanging by the thinnest possible thread, a direct contradiction to the team's loudly stated "we over me" mantra, and a chilling sign of a possible abrupt end to Cunningham's time in Indiana.
I want to see Caitlin Clark play. She only played 13 games last year. I'm pretty sure everybody could agree that we need to see more of Caitlin Clark basketball. Now, with that being said, man, we ain't going to waste no time. Let's head on over to YouTube. Let's get this thing pulled up. So this is the little breakdown of this video in this interview. It's an hour and like 11 minutes long. So this is where we're going to pick segments to start from. So we obviously not going to do the intro. We're obviously not going to do about Stephanie White's career because it really wasn't that good. We're going to do forming a relationship with Caitlin Clark. We're going to start right there.
White didn't just talk about her philosophy. She practically carved it in stone. She emphasized that trust is everything, that transparency isn't negotiable, and that honesty, even the uncomfortable kind, is the backbone of her leadership. She's well known for saying, "I'm an honest, transparent coach. You'll always know where I stand." And yet, when Sophie's name naturally came up, White went silent. Completely silent. In pro sports, such silence is never taken lightly. Coaches know their comments are dissected down to the syllable, and their silences even more so. The stark contrast between her passionate praise for everyone else and the cold void where Sophie's acknowledgement should have been lit up every alarm across the league. It contradicted her own values, openly stated values, about being direct and communicative. This wasn't a forgotten note or a simple pause. It was an intentional non-mention. One that spoke louder than anything she said.
We're going to do forming a relationship with Caitlin Clark. We're going to start right there, and we're just going to let it roll into probably the end part. Let's go here. It says forming a relationship with Caitlin Clark. Should we start at coaching the Indiana Fever? No, I want to get to the Caitlin stuff. Okay, it says 56 points, 20. So that's all the way at the end. All right, here we go. Right here. Let's listen. Be nice.
Believe it or not, the whispers started long before White's revealing interview ever reached the public. Inside circles, the streets and bricks, as they say, were already buzzing. Insiders hinted that the Fever's front office was growing increasingly unhappy with Sophie Cunningham's off-court behavior. And here's the key. It had nothing to do with her on-court production. The issue centered around her personal brand, the content she was creating, the persona she was monetizing, the image she was building outside of franchise control. This was a rare scenario. A player pushing her personal identity forward while the organization worked to protect its own tightly managed brand. What emerged was an unmistakable clash, the kind that rarely gets exposed publicly in professional sports. Cunningham's choices, reportedly seen as clashing with the Fever's identity, had apparently escalated tension to the breaking point. And by the time the interview aired, the writing was practically already on the wall.
And, most importantly for me was just connecting and building trust. I don't know how she does what she does and handles it so gracefully. I'm not sure, myself as a 23-year-old would have been able to handle it the way that she does and still perform at the elite level that she's able to perform, with and at. So building trust, getting to know her, I'm a firm believer that you have to coach and challenge your best players. And for me to be able to do that, I needed to earn her trust. And I need to be honest,
So what exactly was Sophie doing that sparked all this? Reports say she had fully immersed herself in the world of digital content. This wasn't a side hobby. She launched her own podcast, created monetized content, and openly capitalized on trending or controversial storylines. Now, in modern sports, building a personal brand is not only normal, it's encouraged. But the Fever's leadership reportedly viewed Sophie's specific moves as disruptive, maybe even harmful, to the image they were cultivating. This is the modern tug of war. Where does a player's personal ambition end and the team's collective identity begin? Cunningham's pursuit of independent exposure, especially the kind rooted in spicy or headline-grabbing topics, appeared to crash directly into the franchise's more conservative, corporate-minded expectations. The tension didn't just exist, it was escalating.
Instrumental in everything that we did, and AB as well. I mean, those three were the priority for me in terms of look, I've got to really make sure that I'm earning their trust.
So she's fixed it. She said those three are the priority. Y'all remember one interview, she said Kelsey was the priority. Now she's saying those three. See how I told y'all she got a lot of media training? She hurried up and fixed that, and this came off so smooth. So smooth.
Just come in and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's about relationships.
Totally. But the harder you are, meaning the more you're telling the truth, the more they're going to respect you. So it always kind of comes.
At the center of the storm was one unresolvable disagreement: brand representation. The Fever front office reportedly believed Sophie's actions were damaging the team's overall image, a direct violation of what they call the Fever way. And in pro sports, a franchise's brand isn't just a design or slogan. It affects everything: ticket sales, community relationships, sponsorships, fan loyalty, and public trust. A player's off-court choices can either strengthen or weaken that image. From management's perspective, Sophie wasn't just stepping outside the boundaries. She was risking the reputation they had worked to protect. They saw it not as a minor concern, but as a major breach of alignment. And in the corporate world of sports, that's often unforgivable.
Play. She reminds me of some of those guys back in the day who would just go to the park and just try to play pickup games. Yeah. That's her. She just wants to play. She wants to know that you care about her. She wants you to be honest with her. And at the end of the day, she's low maintenance, and you just have to put her in positions to be successful. And I was so excited about the opportunity to just see what we could do and how we could make her life easier, because she really is the one who had been through the trenches with this franchise. Yeah. You think about when Tamika left and retired, it just the franchise went through a lot, and Kelsey's been the constant. And
while many fans and players might see Sophie's ventures as smart business, an athlete preparing for her future, the Fever leadership saw it entirely differently. This difference in perspective created a chasm that ultimately became impossible to bridge. It was a classic conflict between entrepreneurial independence and organizational control. To Sophie, building her brand was forward-thinking. To the Fever, it was a threat. This wasn't a simple disagreement. It was a collision of values. And when a player's personal ambition clashes with a franchise's identity, the outcome is usually predictable. Her departure wasn't just possible, it was becoming inevitable.
Learn how high of an IQ player she is, how great of a facilitator she is, that she could be almost like a point forward. I didn't get that watching her play in college. I didn't get that in her first couple of years in the W. But she is so smart on the floor. She understands the game. She puts a lot of pressure on herself she's a perfectionist, as a lot of elite athletes are. But we were able to utilize her in a different way because of how quickly we were able to recognize just her IQ and her ability to pass and facilitate. And when Caitlin wasn't on the floor, she had to be a point guard for us.
Stephanie White's words, and even more, her calculated silences, became the final confirmation everyone needed. She went out of her way to praise Lexi Hull, someone rarely spotlighted alongside the team's core three. Yet she completely bypassed Sophie Cunningham. That contrast wasn't random. It was strategic. A signal? Her silence didn't just suggest Sophie was slipping out of favor. It implied that the coaching staff and front office were fully aligned on the issue. It was a quiet but unmistakable acknowledgement of the internal conflict. Within the language of professional sports, such omissions are never accidents. This was a message, loud, deliberate, and final.
Really wasn't feeling Sophie Cunningham like that. Now, we know Sophie did the thing with Sheldon. Sophie say little stuff online. She got a little podcast, and she monetizing off this whole situation, bro. Which, that's what she's supposed to do. Now, from my understanding, and what I heard, is that the Indiana Fever front office don't really like the Sophie Cunningham tactics. They don't like what Sophie be doing out here on these streets. Basically, it's kind of like a bad image, or it's not the Fever way. But at the end of the day, I'm for what Sophie.
To understand the gravity of Sophie's exclusion, you need to revisit White's entire coaching philosophy: trust, honesty, and challenging players to rise above themselves. She compared her competitive edge to Caitlin Clark's, calling it that same type of psycho drive to win. She emphasized shutting out noise and maintaining a we over me identity. Through that lens, Sophie's Public Ventures podcast appearances and monetization came across as the very noise White warned against. White took time to describe deep trust building with Clark, Boston, and Plum, the players forming the future foundation of the franchise. She went into detail about their strengths, their adaptability, their focus, and their commitment. And the more she spoke, the more glaring Sophie's absence became. If you're not part of the trust-building conversation, you're not part of the future. White praised Plum as the definition of professionalism. She admired Boston's intelligence and versatility. She compared Clark to a cultural phenomenon like Taylor Swift, praising her mental toughness under pressure. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing about Sophie. Then came the shocker. White went out of her way to uplift Lexi Hall, a player few saw as central. That praise further underscored Sophie's exclusion. In sports, when a coach highlights a role player and ignores another completely, it's a message of shifting priorities. It's a demotion without ever using the word. White reinforced her expectation that players keep issues private, stay ready, and sacrifice for the team. And in that context, Sophie's public content creation likely appeared to violate every one of those principles. Her silence wasn't an oversight. It was a verdict. The synergy between the front office's reported disapproval and White's intentional omission paints a clear picture. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a structural, philosophical, and cultural break. Effectively, it was a silent firing. Sophie Cunningham's chapter with the Fever isn't just closing. It's already closed. The franchise has made its values clear, and in doing so, revealed exactly who fits their future and who does not.